The black SUV rolled to a slow, deliberate stop outside the courthouse, its engine humming with the low growl of a machine meant to be noticed. Even before the door opened, court officers exchanged glances. Important people drove cars like that. Entitled people walked out of them. Elena Harrow stepped onto the pavement as if the ground were hers alone to command. Her heels clicked in a rhythm that sounded almost like a warning. Sunglasses covered half her face, but her chin, lifted just a little too high, told the full story. She wasn't here to face charges. She was here to endure an inconvenience. A chauffeur tried to hand her a small umbrella, but she waved him off without even looking. Her hair was perfect, her jewelry sparkled under the winter sun, and her posture radiated a message the entire block could read. I don't belong here. I'm above this. Inside the courthouse lobby, Elena swept past the security line as if it were meant for other people, ordinary people. A court officer politely gestured for her to step through the scanner. She didn't even slow down. I'm the governor's wife, she murmured, not turning her head. I don't wait. The officer tried again, timidly. Ma'am, everyone passes through. Elena pivoted sharply, finally acknowledging the man. Do you know who I am? The officer froze. Not because of her words. Dozens of defendants claimed importance daily, but because of the way she said them. Not loud. Not panicked. Just assured. As if reality itself would adjust for her. A second officer stepped in. Ma'am, please. It's protocol. Elena stared at him like he was a stain she might sue. Then, annoyed, she tossed her handbag onto the conveyor belt and stalked through. Her heel struck the metal with a decisive crack, snapping the air with arrogance. Upstairs, Courtroom 2 buzzed with the soft murmurs of a typical morning docket, until Elena entered. The door swung open with a theatrical flair, drawing every eye. A woman in the second row whispered, "Is that her?" A man shook his head, but even he couldn't look away. Elena strutted down the aisle, ignoring the bailiff's instructions to sit with the defendants. Instead, she claimed a seat meant for legal counsel, crossing her legs like a queen receiving subjects. From the bench, Judge Caprio looked up. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes, calm, steady, unreadable, followed her with the precision of someone who'd seen every type of pride walk through his courtroom. Mrs. Harrow, the bailiff whispered nervously. That's not your seat. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. It is now, she replied. A ripple of tension traveled through the room. The prosecutor, gathering her files, tightened her jaw. Court officers exchanged looks. A witness waiting for his case shifted uncomfortably. Judge Caprio folded his hands. Mrs. Harrow, he said gently, please take the designated seat. Elena finally turned her head toward him, slowly, like acknowledging a subordinate with patience. Your Honor, she said, her voice silky and patronizing, I think we all know I won't be here long. Let's not pretend this hearing is anything more than a formality. The statement dropped like a stone in water, creating ripples of disbelief. Caprio didn't react outwardly, but a small, almost imperceptible breath left him. He'd dealt with arrogance before, but this was something sharper. More entitled. More dangerous. Mrs. Harrow, he repeated softly, take your seat. We will begin shortly. Elena exhaled through her nose, annoyed, and moved, all slow, deliberate contempt, to the correct chair. Her phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced at the screen and smirked. The smirk was what caught Judge Caprio's attention. Because it wasn't nervous. It wasn't worried. It was the smirk of someone who already had a plan. Somewhere below the bench, Caprio's fingers tapped once. Something told him her arrogance wasn't the problem. It was the reason. And with that small vibration hidden in her palm, the real danger had just walked into his courtroom. The courtroom settled into a hush as the clerk announced the next case. Papers shuffled, pens clicked, and anticipation rippled through the benches. Case number 4821, the clerk called. State versus Elena Harrow. The prosecutor rose, calm and prepared. Elena remained seated, crossing her legs with elegance sharpened by disdain. She didn't look at the prosecutor. She didn't look at the judge. She stared forward, chin slightly raised, as though the very idea of facing consequences was beneath her. Judge Caprio nodded for the prosecutor to proceed. "Your Honor," she began, "the defendant is charged with reckless driving, failure to comply with law enforcement commands, and verbal harassment of a responding officer." Elena scoffed, loudly. All eyes snapped to her. The prosecutor blinked. "Is there something you'd like to add, Mrs. Harrow?" Elena's smile was a thin thread of mockery. "Yes. I'd like to add that your responding officer exaggerated everything because he recognized me. And some people," she added, tilting her head, "get intimidated by powerful men and their families." A collective inhale echoed through the courtroom. The prosecutor exhaled slowly, recalibrating. "Mrs. Harrow, the officer's report is fiction," Elena cut in. Judge Caprio raised a hand. "Mrs. Harrow, you'll have your chance to speak. Allow the prosecution to continue." Elena leaned back in her chair, drumming her nails on the table. "Of course, Your Honor," she said in a tone that translated to "I'll do what I want." The prosecutor cleared her throat and resumed. "The officer states that the defendant refused to provide her license when asked and responded with, quote, 'I don't answer to you. Call someone important.'" Elena smirked again. "That's accurate," she said. "Because I don't answer to him." Someone in the back row muttered, "Wow." Judge Caprio's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Harrow, this is a court of law. You answer here." The way she looked at him, calculated boredom wrapped in entitlement, wasn't just disrespect. It was dominance. Or at least an attempt at it. The prosecutor continued, though frustration flickered across her composed expression. "The officer followed protocol, and when the defendant refused to cooperate, he issued a citation. The defendant then allegedly became verbally hostile." "Allegedly?" Elena laughed softly, shaking her head. "Just say it. I hurt his feelings." "Poor thing." The prosecutor closed her folder. The room bristled. Everyone felt it. This wasn't arrogance anymore, it was provocation. Judge Caprio leaned forward, voice calm but firmer. "Mrs. Harrow, your tone does not help your case." Elena crossed her arms. "Neither does wasting my time with this charade." A ripple of tension cracked through the air like a quiet storm forming. Caprio studied her carefully. Her arrogance wasn't random. It was strategic, defensive, built on the confidence of someone who believed they were untouchable. But there was something else too, something he now recognized in her posture. Nervousness, only visible in the brief flicker of her eyes toward her handbag. Her fingers inched toward it. Slow, delicate, the same way someone might reach for a lifeline. Judge Caprio caught it instantly. The prosecutor didn't notice. The gallery didn't notice. But Caprio had spent decades observing human behavior under pressure. Elena wasn't just entitled. She was preparing for something. He watched her thumb slide along the edge of her phone inside the bag. A screen lit up briefly, its glow reflecting in her sunglasses. "Mrs. Harrow," he said softly, "is there something more important on that device than the charges against you?" She froze for half a second, but quickly recovered, giving a dismissive shrug. "It's private." "Nothing in my courtroom is private," Caprio responded. Elena's jaw tensed. A hairline crack in her composure. The prosecutor watched the interaction with raised brows, sensing the shift in temperature but not understanding the cause. Elena exhaled sharply, shifting in her seat as though needing distance from her own rising anxiety. The judge noticed everything. The way her fingers trembled once. The way her heel tapped, too softly to be smug, too fast to be calm. The way she kept glancing at that phone like a weapon she wasn't ready to use. Yet. Caprio folded his hands. "We will continue," he said. "But Mrs. Harrow, do not touch that phone again." The line wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. Elena smiled, a small, defiant smile, then slowly slid her hand into her bag again. The courtroom held its breath. And for the first time since she walked in, Judge Caprio's eyes sharpened with real concern. Whatever Elena was planning, it was about to change everything. The fluorescent courtroom lights buzzed faintly above, but beneath them, the tension was electric. It wrapped around the benches, seeped into the wooden panels, and clung to every whispered breath from the spectators. Elena Harrow sat like royalty wrongfully summoned to a peasants' gathering. Her posture was flawless, chin held high, shoulders squared, her entire presence radiating. "This place exists to inconvenience everyone but me." The prosecutor glanced down at her notes, reorganizing them with quiet irritation. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to present the dashcam footage to support the officer's report." Before Judge Caprio could respond, Elena lifted a hand, palm outward, as if instructing a servant to stop. "No," she said sharply. "We're not doing this." A stunned silence followed. Caprio's brow lifted. "Mrs. Harrow, you don't decide what evidence is shown." Elena huffed, adjusting her diamond bracelet with exaggerated grace. "Your Honor, let's not pretend this footage means anything. My husband, Governor Harrow, is already aware of the situation. This will be handled." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Several people leaned forward. One woman's mouth fell open. Judge Caprio exhaled deeply, containing the irritation beginning to brew. "This court does not operate based on political relationships," he said carefully. "That's adorable," Elena replied with a tight smile. The prosecutor nearly choked. "Adorable." Elena crossed her legs leisurely. "Yes. This whole performance. The questions. The evidence. The concern." She waved a hand dismissively. "It's all very charming." Caprio leaned forward, elbows on the bench. "Mrs. Harrow, this is your hearing. This is your chance to clarify your actions. I recommend you take it seriously." She met his gaze with cold indifference. "I take my time seriously, not this." The room tensed as though the walls themselves were offended. The prosecutor stepped closer to the bench. "Your Honor, this is a blatant refusal to cooperate." Elena snorted. "Cooperate? With who? With what? This sad little setup." Her condescension was no longer subtle, it was weaponized. The prosecutor fought to steady her voice. "Mrs. Harrow, the officer was simply performing." "Performing?" Elena repeated, laughing under her breath. "Exactly. Everything here is a performance. But unfortunately for you, I've seen higher stakes and bigger audiences." Her phone buzzed inside her bag. Her fingers twitched. Caprio noticed. She did not reach for it, yet, but the awareness in her body said enough. It pulsed under her skin, illuminating the arrogance with a new layer, desperation. Like someone waiting for backup. "Mrs. Harrow," Caprio said slowly, "I will ask again, do you intend to participate in this hearing respectfully?" Elena tilted her head with a controlled smile. "Respect is earned. And you believe you've earned the right to ignore the law?" She shrugged. "I don't need to earn rights. I already have them." The words hung in the air like a confession made proudly. A man in the back row whispered, "She's insane." Elena heard him. She turned her head just enough to shoot him a glare filled with venomous superiority. The man shrunk back. Judge Caprio tightened his grip on the armrests. "Mrs. Harrow, if you cannot comply with the rules of this court, I will." Her phone buzzed again. This time, she dragged her fingers over the leather of her handbag, lingering near the zipper. The prosecutor's eyes darted toward her movement, though she didn't fully grasp the significance. Only Caprio watched with complete clarity. He saw the exact moment entitlement transformed into strategy. Elena's shoulders shifted subtly, anticipation tightening the muscles. Her breathing grew shallow but confident. Her lips curled at the edges, forming a secretive, triumphant smile. She wasn't worried. She was waiting. And then, almost theatrically, she slid the phone halfway out of her bag, its screen glowing with an incoming message labeled, "Governor Harrow, urgent." Gasps erupted across the room. Judge Caprio's jaw locked. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper meant only for herself, but the courtroom was silent enough to hear it. Perfect timing. The power shift was palpable. And for the first time that morning, Judge Caprio felt the air turn heavy with the promise of conflict far larger than a courtroom violation. The courtroom's energy had shifted, no longer stiff with irritation but swollen with anticipation, like the pause before a storm breaks open. Elena Harrow, now fully emboldened, slid her phone into her lap beneath the table. Not hidden well, no subtlety, no fear, just the arrogant confidence of someone who believed she was operating beyond consequence. Judge Caprio saw it instantly. But he said nothing. Not yet. He watched. Every movement. Every breath. Every flicker of panic buried beneath her mask of superiority. Elena's thumb danced across the screen. Her expression remained poised, but her posture betrayed her. The slight forward lean, the quick dart of her eyes to his bench, the shallow breaths that came with high-stakes deceit. A court officer at the front noticed her hand move and stiffened. Another exchanged a look with the prosecutor. The whispers weren't verbal. They lived in glances, in tension, in the silent electricity of people bracing for something they couldn't name. The prosecutor cleared her throat. "Your Honor, may I continue with evidence presentation?" Caprio didn't move his gaze from Elena. "Of course," he said softly. Elena pretended not to hear the subtle warning in his tone. The prosecutor stepped toward the monitor. The dashcam footage clearly shows. A soft click broke the silence. Elena had accepted a call. Her phone rested half-hidden beneath her sleeve, her voice nearly soundless. "Tom, pick up. I need you." Judge Caprio lifted a hand. The entire room froze. "Mrs. Harrow," he said, voice calm but edged with steel, "place the phone on the desk." Elena jerked slightly, the shock breaking her composure for the first time. I'm not on my phone." The lie was instantaneous and terrible. Every eye in the room was on her. Every breath held. Caprio stood. The quiet scrape of his chair echoed louder than any shout. His robe shifted with the movement, adding a subtle weight to each step as he descended from the bench. Elena's bravado faltered. Her hand trembled around the phone. "Mrs. Harrow," he repeated, now only feet away, "place the device on the desk." "No. No," she whispered, gripping it tighter. "This is private." Caprio's brows lifted slightly. "Private? In a courtroom? During an active hearing?" She swallowed, panic flickering behind her eyes before she smothered it with entitlement. "I'm calling my husband," she hissed. "He'll fix this." The room erupted into murmurs. Caprio raised a hand, restoring silence instantly. "Your husband," he said quietly, "cannot fix what you have chosen to break." Her breathing grew shaky. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Caprio replied. A court officer stepped closer, ready to intervene, but Caprio held out a hand. He would handle this himself. "Elena," he said, not Mrs. Harrow, but Elena, stripping away her shield of status, "put the phone on the desk." Her grip tightened. She pressed the device against her thigh, trying to muffle her whisper. Tom, are you there? Say something, please." The courtroom collectively gasped. She wasn't texting. She wasn't planning. She was already in the act. Calling the governor. Mid-hearing. Live. Caprio extended his hand. "Elena." Her eyes flickered upward, and for the first time, true fear appeared. Not fear of the law, but fear of losing the power she thought protected her. She shook her head. "No. You can't." Another faint voice leaked from the phone speaker. Muffled. Male. Familiar. "Elena. Elena, I can't talk long." "What is?" The courtroom went silent. Elena froze. Judge Caprio's expression was unreadable, calm, but with a depth that hinted at the moral weight of what was unfolding. He spoke slowly. "Mrs. Harrow, hand me the phone." She stared at him, lips trembling. "Don't. Please. You don't want to do this." But the judge didn't move his hand back. He extended it further, waiting, not forcing, not threatening, simply expecting. And that expectation snapped the last thread of her composure. With a defeated, shaking breath, Elena placed the phone on the desk. Caprio looked down at the glowing screen, the governor's name still blinking across it. He pressed one button. Speaker mode. A chorus of gasps filled the courtroom. And from the phone, the governor's voice came through clearly. "Elena, what have you done?" The courtroom felt unusually cold that morning, as if the air itself sensed what was coming. The hum of whispered speculation faded the moment Judge Caprio stepped through the side door. His expression was unreadable, no warmth, no irritation, only a quiet, heavy calm. It was the kind of silence that didn't soothe. It warned. Everyone stood. Everyone waited. And the senator's daughter, Lila Merrow, shifted in place, pressing her palms against her skirt as if hiding the tremor in her hands. "Please be seated," Judge Caprio said, softly, almost gently. Yet the softness carried weight. The type that made the room sit up straighter. He arranged a few papers, not looking at her. Lila swallowed. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering something urgent, but her eyes stayed locked on the judge with a mixture of dread and defiance. Caprio didn't speak. He didn't glare. He simply existed in a silence so deliberate it became the loudest thing in the room. Finally, he lifted his gaze. "Ms. Merrow," he began, "we continue your hearing today. Before we proceed, is there anything you would like to tell the court?" Lila blinked. Too quickly. "And no, Your Honor," she said, forcing steadiness. "I'm prepared to follow the process." A muscle in Caprio's jaw moved, subtle but sharp. "The process," he repeated, as if tasting the word. Her lawyer stepped in. "Your Honor, my client is ready to enter a statement." But Caprio raised a single finger. A small gesture. Yet it froze the attorney mid-sentence. "I wasn't speaking to you, counselor." Lila inhaled, shaky and shallow. The judge leaned forward, folding his hands. "Ms. Merrow, I want to be clear that this courtroom depends on honesty, integrity, transparency. If there's anything you wish to clarify before we proceed, now is your moment." There it was. A chance. A lifeline. But she didn't take it. Her chin lifted instead. "I have nothing to hide, Your Honor." The lie cracked through the room like static. Caprio exhaled slowly, leaning back. His eyes drifted to the audience, briefly, as though measuring their anticipation, before returning to her. "Very well," he said. He turned a page in his file. Lila's breathing hitched. Her eyes darted toward her purse, where her phone was buried, screen turned face down. Caprio let the silence stretch again, just long enough for her composure to fray. "Ms. Merrow," he said evenly, "do you believe this court operates at the mercy of political influence?" Her face paled. "No, no, Your Honor, of course not." "And do you believe justice is something to be adjusted, depending on one's last name?" "No, Your Honor." "And are you certain," he said, leaning in slightly, "that every communication you have made in relation to this case has been truthful, appropriate, and respectful of the court's authority?" Lila froze. The question was surgical, precise, merciless. Her lawyer whispered urgently again, but she didn't hear him. Her throat tightened. Her eyes flicked toward the judge's bench, searching for any sign, anger, disappointment, leniency, but his face was carved in stone. Caprio closed the file. The sound echoed louder than a gavel. "I see," he said. "Then let us proceed, with full transparency." He reached beneath his bench. Lila's heart stopped. Her lawyer's head snapped up. Murmurs rippled across the courtroom. And Judge Caprio placed a single printed sheet of paper on the bench, face down, and rested his fingertips lightly on it. "Ms. Merrow," he said quietly, "before I turn this page over, think very carefully." Her breath came fast. Her hands trembled openly now. Caprio's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Because what's written here changes everything." The courtroom went dead silent. Then he lifted the page, slowly, and Lila's eyes widened in horror. There are moments when sound behaves differently, where every click, breath, and whisper feels amplified. This was one of them. Judge Caprio held the printed page between two fingers, the way someone might hold a fragile piece of evidence. Lila Merrow's face had already drained of color, but when he slowly turned the page upright and placed it on the bench, the room became unbearably still. "Ms. Merrow," Caprio said, voice steady, "you stated moments ago that all communication regarding this case has been appropriate. Correct?" Her lips parted, but no answer came out. "Correct," he repeated. She nodded hastily. "Why, yes, Your Honor." Her attorney's jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. Caprio tapped the page. A soft, deliberate tap. "The court obtained this message through proper procedure. A message sent from your phone, during the previous recess." She swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I think there must be. I don't deal in guesses, he said quietly. Only facts. He lifted the phone sitting on the bench, her confiscated device. The courtroom gasped. Lila's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened against her palms until her knuckles went white. Her lawyer half rose from his seat. Your Honor, if we could discuss this privately. Caprio didn't even look at him. The content of this message involves an attempt to influence a court ruling. There is nothing private about that in this courtroom. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. Lila's entire body stiffened. I didn't mean, it wasn't. Caprio raised one hand. Silence slammed down instantly. When this court is under threat of corruption, interference, or manipulation, transparency becomes not only necessary, but mandatory. He held up the phone. I will read the message aloud. Her eyes widened in panic. Your Honor, please. But Caprio's thumb hovered over the screen. And then, with a subtle shift in his tone, he said, In fact, I think it should be heard as it was intended. He pressed a button. A soft beep echoed. Speaker mode activated. The audience collectively leaned forward. Lila gasped. No, Your Honor, no, please don't. Caprio set the phone on the bench. The bright screen lit the underside of his face. Then he hit play on the audio transcription. A robotic voice read her message aloud, every word echoing across the courtroom like a confession shouted into a megaphone. Dad, it's happening again. I need you to fix this. Get someone to call the judge. I'm not going down for this. Do something. Lila crumpled backward into her chair, covering her mouth with shaking hands. Her lawyer stared forward, defeated. The courtroom erupted, gasps, whispers, disbelief, but Caprio's gavel slammed down instantly. Order, he commanded. The sound boomed through the chamber like thunder. The audience fell silent again. Lila's shoulders shook. Her eyes glistened, not from remorse but from raw, exposed fear. Caprio leaned forward slowly. His expression wasn't angry, it was deeply disappointed. Ms. Marrow, he said, voice low but resonant, you attempted to weaponize political power against justice. You attempted to bend this courtroom to your will. And now, the truth is no longer hiding. Her voice broke. I just didn't want to be ruined. Caprio paused, studying her. Young lady, he said softly, a person is not ruined by accountability. They are ruined by the lies they tell to avoid it. Her breathing grew uneven. Tears gathered. He lifted the phone again. There is, he added, one more message sent just moments after the first. A follow-up. The audience shifted, stunned. Lila's eyes filled with terror. No, she whispered. Please, please don't read that. Caprio placed the device flat on the bench, tapped the second notification, and turned the volume up. Speaker mode engaged. The phone chirped. And then, Dad, if he won't listen, there are other ways. You know what to do. A collective gasp tore through the room. Caprio's eyes hardened. And he whispered, This changes everything. For a moment, the courtroom stood frozen, everyone suspended in the shock of that final message. Judge Caprio did not look away from the phone. Lila Marrow could barely breathe. Her father, the sitting governor, was still on the line. The speaker icon glowed bright. And then, through static, a voice emerged. Deep, tired, strained. Judge Caprio. I need to speak. The governor. Gasps rippled through the courtroom like an electric current. A court officer stepped forward, unsure if he should intervene. The prosecutor blinked in disbelief. Even Lila seemed unsure whether this was salvation or the beginning of a deeper fall. Caprio didn't flinch. This is a court of law, and you are not recognized until I decide you are. The governor exhaled sharply, his breath crackling through the speaker. Frank, please. Don't turn this into a spectacle. Caprio's gaze hardened. I didn't turn it into anything, Governor. Your daughter did. Lila dropped her head, covering her face with trembling fingers. The weight of her father's embarrassment was crushing her. There was a long silence, broken only by a soft hum of background noise, wherever the governor was calling from. A private office. A motorcade? A backroom? No one knew. Finally, his voice returned, lowered and fragile. "She's my daughter, Frank." Caprio leaned back slightly. "And that is the very reason you should have stayed out of this." Lila's attorney whispered, "Governor, sir, this isn't the right—" "Quiet!" Lila snapped suddenly, voice cracking with desperation. "Dad, do something. Please, do something." Her voice echoed off the wooden walls, raw and terrified. Governor Merrow inhaled sharply, as if stabbed by his own daughter's words. "You don't understand what you're asking of me," he murmured. "Lila, this isn't a problem I can fix. Not this time." Her eyes widened, lips trembling. "You promised you always would." The governor didn't immediately answer. Caprio, however, did. "Promises," he said quietly, "do not erase consequences." Lila's breathing changed, quicker, shallower, as though every illusion she had ever held was cracking open at her feet. The governor's voice returned, low and trembling now, stripped of political performance. "Judge Caprio, the second message my daughter sent you, she didn't mean it. She was panicked, emotional, afraid." "No," Caprio replied. "She was entitled. And that entitlement grew from somewhere." The words struck the courtroom like a physical blow. A beat. Then the governor said something no one expected. "You're right." The entire courtroom shifted. Even Caprio paused. Lila stared at the phone as if hearing a stranger. "Dad, what are you saying?" A heavy breath. "I should have told you this years ago." The room tightened. No one moved. No one blinked. The governor continued. "I protected you from everything. Covered every mistake. Smoothed every road. I thought I was being a good father." His voice cracked. "I wasn't. I was raising someone who believed consequences were optional." Lila's face crumpled. Her lower lip trembled violently. "Dad, stop. Please don't say this." Caprio watched silently, but there was no triumph in his expression. Only solemn recognition. The governor pressed on, sounding older by the second. "And now my decisions have endangered more than my career. They've endangered justice itself." There was a faint noise, papers shuffling, someone speaking in the background on his end, but he cut them off. "Judge, there's something else. Something you need to know. About the night of her arrest." The courtroom inhaled as one. Lila shook her head violently. "No. No, Dad, don't. The governor didn't listen. "Frank, she wasn't alone in the car." A loud gasp tore through the room. He continued, voice breaking. "And the person she was with was injured." Lila screamed, "Stop!" Caprio leaned forward slowly. "Governor, who was in the car?" Static. Silence. "Then it was." The line crackled violently. "And went dead." The courtroom felt suddenly colder, as if the temperature had dropped the moment the phone line died. The governor's final unfinished sentence, "It was," hung in the air like smoke from a gun that had just fired. Judge Caprio slowly lowered the phone to the bench. The silence was suffocating. Lila shook uncontrollably, clutching her arms to her chest, her eyes locked on the device as though it might resurrect the call if she stared hard enough. "Dad, pick up," she whispered helplessly, though the line was long gone. Caprio cleared his throat, the sound rough, aged, and deeply controlled. "Ms. Merrow," he said, "we will address the matter your father raised." Her whole body jerked. "And no, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean any of that. He was confused." The prosecutor stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "Your Honor, the governor has disclosed a material fact relevant to the defendant's charges. Someone was in the vehicle. Injured." Lila's head snapped toward her. "Shut up!" she shouted, voice cracking. A court officer immediately stepped closer. Caprio raised one hand, stopping him. "Ms. Merrow," he said softly, "do you understand what it means if you fled the scene of an injury?" "I didn't," she sputtered. "There was no one." "He's lying. He wasn't even there." "Then how did he know?" the prosecutor asked quietly. That single question unmoored Lila completely. Her breaths grew ragged, her eyes darting toward the doors, the gallery, the ceiling, as though an escape route might magically appear. Caprio watched her with the grave patience of someone witnessing a structure collapse. First a crack, then a shudder, then the irreversible fall. "Ms. Marrow," he said slowly, "your father's silence speaks louder than anything he could have said." Her voice dissolved into frantic sobs. "You don't understand. He's trying to protect me. He always has. And that protection," the judge replied, "has finally reached its breaking point." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her whole frame wilted, sinking lower, like her spine had lost the strength to hold her. Cameras in the back clicked softly, reporters capturing a woman who had entered the courtroom like royalty, now unraveling in real time. The prosecutor approached the bench. "Your Honor, the state moves to reopen the investigation into the night of the incident, including potential charges related to leaving an injured party at the scene." Lila's attorney, red-faced and desperate, sputtered, "This is wildly premature. We have no evidence, no confirmation, only an interrupted phone call." "We have her reaction," the prosecutor countered. "And that's telling us plenty." Caprio's gaze shifted to Lila. She froze, sensing judgment looming. "Ms. Marrow," he said, voice heavy with moral gravity, "you are not on trial for your father's sins. Only your own." Her lip trembled. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Caprio leaned forward. "Then now is the moment to tell the truth." The room held its breath. But before she could answer, the double doors at the back of the courtroom opened with a slow, creaking groan. Every head turned. A man stepped inside. Nervous. Limping. His left arm wrapped tightly in a brace. His eyes found Lila immediately. Her face drained of blood. The prosecutor whispered, "Oh my God!" Caprio narrowed his eyes. The man swallowed hard and said, voice trembling, I need to speak. I was the one in the car." A thunderous wave of gasps surged through the courtroom. Lila staggered backward as though struck, her hand flying to her mouth. The man's voice cracked. "And she left me there." The courtroom exploded into noise. Caprio's gavel slammed down, once, twice, each strike echoing like a hammer driving the final nail into the coffin of Lila Marrow's collapsing power. "And over the rising chaos," he spoke. "This hearing," he declared, "just changed course." The man's words, "She left me there," hung in the air like a verdict delivered by fate itself. Lila stared at him, trembling so violently her jewelry clinked with every movement. Judge Caprio settled his glasses against the bridge of his nose. His calm, measured silence was more powerful than any outburst. "Sir," he said finally, "approach the bench." The man limped forward, every step punctuated by a grimace. His arm brace squeaked softly. People in the gallery shifted to get a better view. This wasn't just testimony, it was the unraveling of a carefully crafted illusion. Lila's attorney whispered frantically, "Don't say anything, don't do anything until I tell you." But she wasn't listening. Her eyes followed the man like she was watching a ghost she never expected to see again. Caprio waited until the man was steady. "What is your name?" he asked. "Nathan Hale," the man said, voice wavering. I was with Lila the night of the crash." Lila let out a quiet, broken whine. Caprio nodded once. "Mr. Hale, tell this court what happened." Nathan swallowed hard. "We'd been at a New Year's event. There was drinking, too much drinking. I told her not to drive, but she insisted. She said." His eyes flickered toward her. Lila mouthed, "Don't." Nathan continued anyway. "She said she couldn't be seen getting into an Uber like some random nobody. She said the press might photograph her." Murmurs erupted. Caprio held up a hand, silencing the room instantly. "Go on." "We were halfway home when another car cut us off. She swerved, lost control, and we hit a barrier." He paused, voice tightening. "I hit my head. Blacked out. When I woke up, she was gone." Lila squeezed her eyes shut, tears escaping down her cheeks. Caprio's voice was low, restrained. "You were left alone, injured, in the cold." Nathan nodded. "I crawled out. Someone eventually found me on the roadside. I tried calling her after. She never answered." In the gallery, A woman gasped softly, covering her mouth. Lila finally broke. "I panicked," she cried. "I thought if anyone found out, if Dad found out, my life would be over. I didn't know you were that hurt." Nathan turned toward her. "Lila, you never even checked." Her knees buckled slightly. She gripped the defense table to keep from collapsing. Caprio leaned forward. "Young lady," he said, voice heavy with moral weight, "privilege may insulate a person from consequences, but it cannot prevent consequences from finding them." Lila's breath hitched. "For years," Caprio continued, "it appears your father shielded you from accountability. But protection is not love. And love is not immunity." Each sentence landed like a gavel strike. "This courtroom," he said, "is the one place where power means nothing, where truth is the only currency. And today, that truth is staring you directly in the face." Lila's shoulders shook with uncontrollable sobs. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Nathan's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "Sorry doesn't heal what happened. But it's a start." Caprio sat back, exhaling slowly. "This court," he said, "is prepared to move forward with additional charges." Bang! The back doors slammed open. Everyone turned. A woman in a dark suit strode in, her pacing sharp, urgent, official. A security detail flanked her. She approached the bench and handed Caprio a sealed envelope. "Your Honor," she said, breathing heavily, "this just arrived by emergency courier from the governor's office. Marked confidential and time-sensitive." Lila's head snapped up. Caprio opened the envelope, his brows furrowing as he scanned the contents. The courtroom waited. Then his eyes widened, just slightly, but enough to shift the room's entire balance. He looked up at Lila. "Young lady, your father has issued a statement." He paused. "And it changes the entire trajectory of this case." Judge Caprio's fingers tightened around the envelope, the paper crackling in the tense silence. Lila stared straight at him, frozen with dread, as though every muscle in her body had gone rigid. Nathan watched quietly, clutching his injured arm. The gallery leaned forward like a single breathing organism. Caprio cleared his throat. "This," he began slowly, "is a written statement, and a recorded one." Lila's stomach dropped. "Recorded?" her lawyer echoed, eyes widening. "Your Honor." Caprio lifted his hand, silencing him instantly. "It was delivered with explicit instructions," he said, "that it be played aloud, on speaker." The room buzzed with whispers before the judge's gavel snapped the air back into order. Lila's breathing quickened. "No. No, Dad wouldn't. He wouldn't humiliate me like that." Caprio fixed his gaze on her, calm but stern. "He seems to believe the humiliation already occurred the moment the truth was hidden." He tapped the courtroom phone. A soft chime sounded. Audio file loading, an automated voice announced. Lila's hands flew to her mouth, eyes flooding with terror. Nathan took a tentative step back, bracing himself. The file clicked, then the governor's voice filled the courtroom. But this time it was different. Clearer. Sadder. Older. "Judge Caprio," he began, "if you are hearing this, it means the truth has finally come to light. And my daughter's actions can no longer be shielded." Lila collapsed into her chair, whispering, "Dad, don't!" But the recording continued. "For years, I failed her by protecting her from consequences. I wanted to preserve her name, her future, her privilege. But privilege without accountability becomes poison." A tremor ran through Lila's body. Her fingers dug into the table as if trying to anchor herself. "I love my daughter," the governor said. "But love is not a license to escape justice." The gallery shifted, soft gasps, quiet murmurs, the weight of the governor's words pressing on every corner of the room. Nathan wiped his palms on his pants, his expression torn between relief and sorrow. Caprio sat motionless, his face unreadable. The governor's voice grew heavier. "As for the night of the incident, I was informed immediately. Not by Lila. Not by the police. But by a political aide who covered the call logs." Lila's attorney stiffened. "That's a felony," he muttered under his breath. "I allowed it," the governor admitted. But guilt has a way of rotting a man from the inside. A shaky breath came through the speaker. I knew Nathan was injured. I knew Lila fled. I knew what the law required me to do. And I chose political survival instead. The courtroom exhaled collectively, horrified, astonished, transfixed. Lila shook her head violently. Why would you say that? Why would you destroy yourself like this? Caprio didn't reply. He let the recording answer for him. I am resigning from office as of this morning, the governor said. Gasps tore through the gallery. Even Caprio's eyes flickered with surprise. And I submit myself to investigation for obstruction of justice. A pause. Please, Frank, do not let my failings protect hers. Lila's sob was sharp, guttural, almost childlike. No, Dad, you can't, please. Caprio closed his eyes for a brief, human moment. Then he reached for the gavel. But before he struck, a new voice cut through the speaker. Female. Urgent. Panicked. Governor, wait, you didn't tell him about. The audio scrambled. A shrill beep pierced the room. Then, silence. Caprio slowly lowered his hand. The courtroom was stunned into stillness. What, the prosecutor whispered, was she about to say? Lila looked up, eyes wide, wild, terrified beyond words. Caprio leaned forward, voice low and steady. Ms. Merrow, it appears there is still more you haven't told this court. Her lips parted, but no sound came out.